Hi guys, so with the coming of the fall season, we see lots of beautiful changes in the leaves, but we also see that many of our perennials, they start dying back, and some of them can be a little untidy. So the first thing that we typically want to do is to reach for our pruners, or in some cases, maybe a mini chainsaw. But there are some plants that we should not be pruning at this time. And today we're going to be taking a look at those. Some of them are a definite no, some of them are a maybe. If you have never been here before, my name is Marlene. Welcome to my home and garden channel, everyone. Now let's take a look at these plants. So first we're going to go over the ones that you will definitely want to put your pruners away from those. Number one would be azaleas, and boy are they gorgeous. They're springtime bloomers, and you can see how prolific these blooms are right here. They're just covering over the entire shrub. This is all flowers. There are no leaves on there as yet. Now, of course, there's also the encore varieties that actually bloom for you in the fall season again. So you get double duty. You get spring blooms and fall blooms. Of course, typically, if they're blooming, you're not going to want to mess with them, but the spring ones, you may be tempted to do so. Now, what happens is in the springtime, you get to enjoy these lovely flowers, but the blooms are actually set shortly after they have bloomed in the spring. So you will not want to prune them back at this point. This video right here that I did previously gives you a lot of details on azaleas, and I'll put it in the description box. But what happens is that they bloom on older wood, so if you go in and you cut them back, then you're not going to have those buds set. Over here we have rhododendrons, and rhododendrons are actually cousins to azaleas. While azaleas grow maybe to about 7 or 8 feet at the most, these can go from 12 to about 15 feet. So sometimes you may find that you want to cut the plant back a little bit to control it, and maybe for a little bit of privacy, just different reasons. But just like our azaleas, these also grow, they bloom on old wood. So you'll want to wait until after they bloom, maybe 3 or 4 weeks or so. Then you can go in and you can do your pruning. And typically they recommend not going more than a third of the plant to half as far as what you're taking off. And they're just so gorgeous, and it's a beautiful flower to have in your garden. Moving on to number 3, and that would be Forsythia. And boy, do I love this one, because this one, it just looks like almost like a flame. Yellow one, of course, but it's one of the first plants that blooms in the springtime. So beautiful. There are no leaves on here at this point. It's just all blossoms. And this plant, it's a similar situation where if you go in and you prune it back in the fall, the blooms would have already been set. The buds are there waiting. And when you cut them back, they're not going to bloom for you in the spring. You'll have to come back the following year. Me personally, I just love that free form that it has anyway. So I wouldn't cut it back at any point unless I want to make the plant maybe a little bit smaller. Then you would do this in the same time frame, about 3 to 4 weeks after they have bloomed in the springtime. Over here, these are some beautiful hydrangeas, and that's number 4. These are some mophead ones that I grew at the side of my house. They have a nice, beautiful blue color, and I enjoy them as cut flowers, and I also enjoy them in my garden. It's a very, very favorite summertime bloomer. These are some here that I'm showing you how they look in the fall season or late summer when the blooms have faded. And I still think this is gorgeous. People use them for dry arrangements. They make wreaths for their door and just different things like that. But this plant also blooms. This mophead variety, it also blooms on old wood. So cutting them back in the fall is going to cause your plant to not give you blooms the following summer. You can deadhead a little bit if you want to, but do it as early as you can in the summertime after they have bloomed, because we want to go in and enjoy these wonderful blooms. These are some pink ones right here that I'd seen at my garden center, and boy, they are large, and they do need that energy. They go dormant over the winter, but everything is already set in them for them to come up. Now over here, this is the lace cap variety, which is also a big leaf variety like the one you just saw before, and they behave in a similar way. I think they're so cute, so pretty. And what I will say though is that if you see parts of the plant that are diseased, at that point in the fall, you can go in and just take those out. Or if you see that, they're damaged and they look like they will never ever bloom, they'll never put on any growth, you can go in and take those off. But just try to stay away from, the parts that are green and alive, because typically when you prune most plants, or typically any plant for that matter, the plant gets triggered to start putting out new branches or stems. These over here, these are some oak leaf hydrangeas, and this variety likes shade. So it will survive in shady areas if that's what you need. And as you can see how the leaves are shaped, they're shaped like oak leaves, which is why they're given that name. They too also bloom on old wood. So if you go in and you prune them back in the fall, the buds would have been set already and they will not be available for you. There are also varieties like the climbing ones. If you have those, try to stay away from pruning them in the fall season so you can enjoy these wonderful flowers when late spring to early summer comes around. Moving on to the next one, and that would be Russian sage, also called Perovskia sage. And these are beautiful summer bloomers. They're so gorgeous in the landscape. They kind of have a wispy, feathery type look, as you can see. They are a magnet for bees. They absolutely love them. The thing about this plant is that it's a little bit, because of the feathery nature of it, it can be a little bit delicate. So if you prune it back, even though they are cold hardy, if you prune them back in the fall, when the colder weather comes in the winter, they may not be able to stand up to it. So it's best to wait until, in the late winter or early spring to go in and cut them back at that time, preferably in the early spring. Another one is lilacs. Lilacs don't grow in my area. I'm in growing zones 8. I don't see them around and they're pretty cold hardy and they grow pretty tall. They can grow up to 30 feet tall. So, of course, you'll want to shape them up depending on what you're wanting for your garden. But just bear in mind that they bloom on old wood as well. So if you cut them back, then you will not get any spring blooming flowers until the year after that. So just hold off a little bit till they bloom and then go in and do what you need to do and you can enjoy these wonderful flowers. And I just wanted to take a moment to invite you to subscribe to my channel. I do lots of gardening topics, tips and tours, and I also decorate my porch with flowers for each season of the year. We have a wonderful group of gardeners here. We exchange ideas, and I always love your sweet comments, when you just give feedback on what you're getting and information that you have to offer as well. We also have merchandise which is seasonal. That's a great way to support our channel to keep things going here. And you can just click on the shop icon or go to my channel icon, and under the tab that says shopping, it will be available for you there. Thanks in advance. Moving on to number 7, that would be Laura petalum. And this plant has gained a lot of popularity in my area over the recent years. And you can see that the beautiful flowers, they look like little tassels on there. I think that they're just so cute. And so these also, like your azaleas, these are ones that form an old wood. So if you go in and you give them a trim in the fall, you're not going to get to enjoy these beautiful blooms. And of course, we want for that to happen. It's such a nice mix of flowers and these colored leaves that they have. So if that happens to you, though, all is not lost for these because they do have beautiful colorations in the leaves. So at least you will have that to enjoy, for a pop of color in your garden. But it's best just to avoid pruning them and waiting until after they have bloomed, about 3 to 4 weeks after. Next, we move on to coral bells or heuchera. That would be number 8. And this plant is pretty cold hardy, mostly grown for the foliage, the leaves, but it also produces some nice little flowers on top that almost look like a little cloud over them. Maybe that's why they call them bells. I'm not sure. But what to bear in mind about this plant is that even though it is cold hardy, the leaves actually protect the crown of the plant, and it's very important for this variety. So you'll want to wait until after the weather has warmed up a little bit, in springtime to go in and cut them back. And isn't this one gorgeous? Just look at it. I think it's so unusual and it pairs so well with things like pansies in front of it and all of that. Just look at that cute name that it has right there. Now we're going to take a look at the ones that are maybe you don't necessarily have to cut these back because there are different reasons why. We'll talk about them. The first one is coneflowers, and that's number 9. Coneflowers, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I absolutely love them. And they're beautiful summertime bloomers. They're pretty, drought tolerant, and they attract wonderful pollinators to our garden. And so, as the season wears along, you notice that the blossoms, how they change the flower heads. They have a rounder top and the petals fold backwards. Now, those little seed heads that you're seeing there, if you leave them there, what happens is in the winter, the birds, especially like the yellow finches, they're beautiful yellow and black birds that you'll see sometimes in your garden. They get to feast on these. I understand they're a little bit unsightly in some cases, so you can cut them back and put them in a container, like, maybe like a watering can that's empty or just something else that they're available to them so they can have it. Black-eyed Susans is the next one, number 10. They are cousins to the coneflower, and they behave in a very similar way in terms of how they're shaped as they get older, as well as, the seed heads having those little things available for the bird. So if you go in and you take them off, you're not going to have it. But I can understand if you need to tidy up your garden and you just want to take them out, then you can do so. It's not going to affect them because they do bloom on newer wood, or it's kind of a little woody tissue, but they bloom on the newer stems that come up, so they'll be okay. So the main thing to bear in mind is that, as the fall season comes around and you want to tidy up your garden, you don't want to just go in and think of what's going to happen in the springtime. Yes, you want your garden to look a certain way in the fall season, but if you prune this plant back, how is it going to affect the plant when the season comes around, when they're supposed to be blooming for you? And so for your hydrangeas, they're not all like that. Not all hydrangeas, are going to be blooming on old wood. The panicle hydrangeas, those ones are going to be blooming on newer wood. So if you cut them back, but you still want to do this when the plant is dormant. You don't want to do it in the fall when they're going to start springing and get damaged. This video that I did recently talked a lot about how to get more blooms from your hydrangeas. So I will link it in the description box for you. It's a Limelight hydrangea, and those are becoming more and more popular as the years go by. They say a good rule of thumb is not to cut your plants back, not to prune them back by more than a third, half at the most, because sometimes your plants can go into shock and then you're not going to be happy. I always remember Classy Andrew from her Classy Andrew channel, where she said one year she had cut her hydrangeas back, and she said she thinks the plant got mad at her because all of a sudden the plant looked like it was going to die, and so she left it. And she at this point doesn't even like pruning her hydrangeas, but if you don't have to, you don't have to. You know what I mean? Because hydrangeas, they don't grow, especially the mop head ones, they don't grow that large very quickly. So there usually isn't the need to go in and mess with them too much. But just bear those things in mind. Your plant will definitely let you know if it likes what you did or not. You'll see it's going to look perky and springing out and all of that, blooming and being prolific for you with the blooms and all of that. Or it's just going to look sad and unhappy, and then you'll know and you learn from our mistakes. So we just don't do it again, and we just move on to the next thing. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel in so many ways. Happy gardening, happy fall, and I do hope to see you in the next one. Take care.